A wealthy yet solitary billionaire during a visit to a public school accidentally dropped her handkerchief in the courtyard. At that moment, a poor young black boy rushed over to pick it up, returning it to her with his small hands and a radiant smile that left a deep impression on her. Minutes later, inside the cramped cafeteria, she found him again distressed and nearly in despair as he lacked the money to buy food for his little sister standing beside him. Without a second thought, she swiped her card and bought extra meals for the two of them, unaware that this simple act would set off a chain of events involving the very empire she had spent a lifetime building. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. The black sedan pulled up to Lincoln Elementary just after noon, and Lauren Hart already regretted this visit. The school looked nothing like the glossy photos in the charity proposal her assistant had handed her 2 weeks ago, paint peeled from the brick walls in long, tired strips. The playground equipment wore patches of rust like old scars. Even the flag hanging above the entrance sagged in the windless air. Lauren stepped out of the car, her heels clicking against cracked asphalt. She tugged at the hem of her tailored jacket, navy blue, probably worth more than a month's salary for anyone working here. The contrast wasn't lost on her. "Miss Hart, they're expecting us in the principal's office." Her assistant Claire appeared at her elbow with a tablet already glowing. Lauren nodded. She'd come to inspect Hart Market's donation program computers for the library new chairs for classrooms, the kind of thing that looked good in annual reports. Small change for the corporation, a lifeline for schools like this. As she took her first step toward the entrance, something slipped from her coat pocket, her handkerchief. The silk one with the embroidered H in the corner, a gift from her late mother. It drifted to the ground like a white leaf. "Miss Hart," Claire started, but two small figures were already running toward them. A boy, maybe 6 years old, with skin like polished mahogany and eyes too serious for his age. Behind him, a little girl, younger, her hair pulled into uneven pigtails. They both wore clothes that had seen better days, faded but clean. The boy scooped up the handkerchief, carefully holding it between both palms like it might break. He walked up to Lauren, his sister clutching his free hand. "You dropped this, ma'am." His voice was soft, respectful. Lauren looked down at him. Up close, she could see the kid had those kind of eyes, the kind that seemed to see straight through all the expensive fabric and careful makeup. Clear, honest. "Thank you." She took the handkerchief, surprised by the warmth in his smile, shy but genuine. The little girl peeked out from behind her brother, giving Lauren a small wave. "Miss Hart, we really need to." Claire's hand was already on Lauren's elbow, pulling her toward the school entrance. Lauren glanced back once. The boy was still standing there, watching her go, his hand wrapped protectively around his sister's. Then they disappeared into the crowd of kids streaming toward the cafeteria, and Lauren was swept inside. The tour was exactly what she'd expected. Forced smiles from administrators, rehearsed thank yous, a parade through classrooms where teachers tried too hard to look enthusiastic. Lauren signed what needed signing, nodded at what needed nodding, and felt the familiar numbness settling over her like frost. By the time they reached the cafeteria, she just wanted to leave. "Ms. Hart, if you'd like to see where the students eat." 5 minutes, Lauren cut in. She needed air or at least space. Claire hesitated, then stepped away to take a phone call. Lauren stood near the back of the cafeteria, half hidden behind a support column. The room smelled like institutional food and floor cleaner. Long tables stretched across scuffed linoleum. Kids laughed, shouted, traded snacks, normal kid chaos. Then she saw him again, the boy from earlier. He stood at the service counter, his little sister beside him. In his hand, he clutched a crumpled $5 bill, holding it like it was everything he owned. Because maybe it was. Lauren found herself moving closer, staying just out of sight. The cafeteria worker, a heavy-set woman with tired eyes and a hairnet, leaned over the counter. "What can I get you, honey?" The boy straightened his shoulders. "Ma'am, can I buy half a sandwich, just half, and maybe split it into 2 pieces for me and my sister?" The woman's face softened, but she shook her head. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. We can't do that. It's 1 sandwich or nothing. $6. The boy looked down at his $5 bill. His jaw tightened. "Please, ma'am. My sister, she didn't eat breakfast and—" "I'm sorry. I don't make the rules." The little girl tugged on her brother's sleeve. "It's okay, Matthew. I'm not that hungry." Matthew. So that was his name. Lauren, quote, as chest constricted. She'd seen poverty in reports and statistics. She'd written checks to charities. But standing here watching this kid try to buy half a sandwich with everything he had, her feet moved before her brain caught up. "Excuse me?" Lauren stepped up to the counter, her voice steady. "I'll cover it." Matthew spun around, his eyes going wide. "Ma'am, the lady from you helped us find." He clutched the handkerchief moment in his memory, like she clutched hers. "I remember." Lauren smiled. Something about his face made it easy. "What's your sister's name?" "Maya." The little girl beamed up at her. Lauren turned to the cafeteria worker. "2 of whatever's best today, for both of them, and add a juice box." She pulled out her credit card, then paused. "Actually, what else do you have?" The woman blinked. "We've got chicken tenders, mac and cheese, fruit cups." "1 of each. For both kids." "Ma'am, I know what it costs." Lauren's tone left no room for argument. Matthew's mouth opened and closed. "We can't. That's too much." Lauren crouched down, meeting his eyes at his level. "You picked up something I dropped. I'm returning the favor. Fair trade." The boy looked at his sister, then back at Lauren. Slowly, carefully, he smiled. Not the shy, uncertain smile from before. A real one, bright enough to crack something open inside Lauren's chest. "Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much." When the food came, Matthew and Maya sat at a nearby table. Lauren found herself watching them. The way Matthew made sure Maya got the best pieces. How he wiped her hands with a napkin when she got cheese on her fingers. The quiet, protective way he looked at her. This kid was 6 years old and already carrying the weight of the world. Maya took a bite of chicken tender and her whole face lit up. "Matthew, it's so good." "I know." Matthew grinned at her, then looked over at Lauren. "Thank you, ma'am. Really?" Lauren nodded. Her throat felt tight. Claire appeared at her shoulder. "Miss Hart, the car's ready whenever you are." Lauren stood smoothing her jacket. She should leave. Get back to the office, back to conference rooms and quarterly projections and all the things that made sense. But when she turned to go, Matthew called out, "Ma'am, will you come back?" Lauren paused. Such a simple question. Kids ask things like that all the time. But the way he looked at her, hopeful, trusting, made it feel like a question that mattered. "Maybe I will," she heard herself say. Matthew's smile widened. Maya waved a chicken tender still clutched in her other hand. Lauren walked out of the cafeteria through the hallways with their peeling paint past the rusted playground equipment and back into her sedan. As the car pulled away from Lincoln Elementary, she looked down at the silk handkerchief in her hand. The embroidered H caught the light. A kid with $5 trying to buy half a sandwich. The memory sat heavy in her chest the entire ride back to Hart Tower. She'd come to Lincoln to check a box on a charity initiative. She'd left with something else, entirely a question. She couldn't shake a connection she didn't understand, and the uncomfortable feeling that maybe for the first time in years she'd actually seen something real. Lauren couldn't focus. Back at Hart Tower, she sat in her corner office on the 42nd floor, staring at spreadsheets that blurred into meaningless columns. Revenue projections, market analysis, expansion strategies for Q2. None of it mattered. Matthew's eyes kept appearing in her mind. That serious, too old expression on a 6-year-old's face. The way he'd held that $5 bill like it was his last lifeline. His sister's bright smile when she finally got to eat. "Miss Hart," Claire knocked on the glass door. "The Wednesday afternoon meeting starts in 20 minutes. The Singapore investors are already in the conference room." Lauren looked up. Wednesday. The meeting she'd been preparing for all month. $12 million riding on a single presentation. "Cancel it." Claire's tablet nearly slipped from her hands. "I'm sorry, what?" "Cancel the meeting. Reschedule for next week." "But Miss Hart, they flew in specifically for..." "Then we'll cover their hotel for a few extra days." Lauren was already standing, grabbing her coat. "Tell them something came up. Family emergency." Claire's mouth opened-closed. "Where are you going?" Lauren paused at the door. "To buy cookies." She'd never been inside a high-end bakery before. Not personally. People bought things like this for her, delivered them in elegant boxes to her office or penthouse. But standing in the boutique shop on 5th Avenue, surrounded by glass cases of imported delicacies, Lauren felt oddly purposeful. "I'll take a dozen of those." She pointed at chocolate chip cookies the size of her palm. "And those fruit tarts. Do you have anything with strawberries?" The clerk, a young woman with perfect makeup, smiled professionally. "We have strawberry macarons imported from..." "I'll take 2 dozen. And these Belgian chocolates just arrived this morning. Add them." Lauren moved through the store like she was preparing for a board meeting, pointing at items with the same decisiveness she used in acquisitions. Cookies, pastries, exotic fruits in woven baskets. She didn't look at prices. By the time she finished, the clerk was struggling to fit everything into decorative bags. "Ma'am, this is quite a lot. Are you catering an event?" Lauren thought about Matthew's face when he asked for half a sandwich. Something like that? Lincoln Elementary looked different the second time. Or maybe Lauren was just seeing it differently. She parked her own car this time, no driver, no Claire hovering with schedules. Just her and 2 oversized bags filled with enough sugar to give an entire classroom a stomachache. The school day was ending. Kids poured out of doors shouting, laughing, racing toward waiting parents or buses. Lauren stood near the playground, suddenly uncertain. What was she doing here? She'd already done her good deed. Fed 2 hungry kids. Why come back? It's the cookie lady. Maya's voice cut through the noise like a bell. Both kids came running. Matthew still in his faded jeans and too big t-shirt. Maya with her uneven pigtails bouncing. They didn't slow down, just crashed into Lauren with the unself-conscious trust only children possess. Lauren stumbled, slightly caught off guard by the impact, by the warmth of small arms wrapping around her waist. "You came back!" Maya was practically vibrating with excitement. Matthew looked up at her, and something in his expression made Lauren's throat tight, like he'd hoped but hadn't quite believed. "I brought something." Lauren held up the bags, trying to steady her voice. Maya's eyes went round. "What is it?" "Let's find somewhere to sit." They ended up on a wooden bench near the playground. Lauren watched as Matthew carefully opened the first bag, his movements gentle, reverent. When he saw what was inside, he went very still. "Ma'am, this is too much." "It's just cookies, Matthew." "These aren't just cookies." He pulled out a macaron, turning it over in his small hands like it was made of gold. "These are fancy." Maya already had a chocolate chip cookie halfway to her mouth crumbs on her chin. "Matthew, try one. It's so good." The boy hesitated, then took a small bite. His eyes closed. Lauren found herself smiling. "You like it?" "It's the best thing I ever tasted." He said it simply factually. Then he carefully wrapped the rest in a napkin. "I'm gonna save some for Mama." Something cracked in Lauren's chest. "Matthew," she said quietly. "What's your full name?" "Matthew Johnson, ma'am." He looked at her seriously. "Mama says when someone helps you, you remember their name forever. You're Lauren, right?" "Lauren Hart." "Hart." Matthew repeated it carefully, committing it to memory. "Like the supermarket." Lauren tensed. "Yes. My family owns Hart Market," but Matthew just nodded, no recognition of what that meant. To him, it was just a name. "Mama used to work there," he said. "Before?" "Before what?" Matthew's face clouded. He glanced at Maya, who was now trying a strawberry tart, completely absorbed. "Before Maya got sick and Mama had to stay home. They said she missed too many days." His voice was matter-of-fact, but Lauren could hear the confusion underneath, the hurt of not understanding why the world worked the way it did. "Where's your mama now?" "Looking for work. She leaves early, comes home late. She tries to hide it, but I know she's worried." Matthew picked at the napkin in his lap. "Our house has holes in the roof. When it rains, Mama puts buckets everywhere. She says it's like a game, seeing how many we can catch." Lauren's hands clenched in her lap. "Last night I woke up and saw her at the kitchen table. She had all these papers spread out doing math." Matthew's voice dropped to almost a whisper. She was crying, but trying to be quiet about it. She kept writing numbers and crossing them out. I heard her say, "They just don't add up. They just won't add up." Lauren's vision blurred slightly. She blinked hard. She saw me watching and smiled real big, said she was just doing puzzles. But I know what she was doing. Matthew looked at Lauren and those 2 old eyes were back. She was trying to make the money work, trying to figure out how to pay for food and the leaky roof and Maya's medicine all at once. The numbers that don't add up, not algebra, not calculus, the brutal arithmetic of poverty. Rent plus utilities plus food plus medicine equals more than what you have. No matter how many times you work the problem, the answer stays wrong. "Matthew, where's your dad?" The boy's face went blank. "Don't have one. Never did. Mama says it's just us 3, and that's enough." Maya had finished her tart and now leaned against her brother's shoulder, content and sleepy from sugar. "She's a good mama," Matthew continued. "She never makes us feel bad about stuff we don't have. But I'm not stupid. I see her eating less so we can eat more. I see her wearing the same clothes for years so she can buy Maya new shoes when she grows." Lauren couldn't speak. Her whole life, she'd dealt in millions in market shares in corporate strategies. She'd never once had to choose between eating and keeping the lights on. The worst part, Matthew said so softly Lauren almost missed it, is when Maya asks why we can't have things other kids have. Mama always has an answer, always makes it sound okay. But I can see it in her eyes. She feels like she's failing us. She's not failing you, Lauren said sharply. Too sharply. Matthew looked startled. Sorry, I just mean your mama sounds like she's doing everything she can. I know. Matthew straightened his shoulders, that protective posture back. That's why I try to help. I watch Maya after school so Mama can look for work. I'm good at making her laugh when she's sad. And I don't ask for stuff. Ever. Except half a sandwich when his sister was hungry. Lauren looked at this kid 6 years old carrying responsibilities that would break most adults and felt something shift inside her. Not pity. Something deeper, something that felt like recognition. She'd spent her whole life in boardrooms making decisions that affected thousands of people. Jobs created jobs eliminated, stores opened, stores closed, all just numbers on spreadsheets. But Matthew had just put a face to those numbers. His mother, fired for the crime of being human, for loving her sick daughter more than she feared losing her paycheck. Matthew, what's your address? The boy recited it carefully. Lauren committed it to memory. Why, ma'am? Because, Lauren paused. Because why? What was she planning? Because I want to meet your mama, if that's okay. Matthew studied her face for a long moment. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him, because he nodded. She'd like that. Mama always says good people are rare. I think you're good people, Miss Lauren. The trust in his voice nearly undid her. Maya yawned, her head still on Matthew's shoulder. Can we have more cookies tomorrow? Lauren smiled despite the tightness in her chest. We'll see. That means yes, Maya whispered to Matthew loudly. As Lauren drove away from Lincoln Elementary for the second time, she glanced in her rearview mirror. Matthew stood on the curb, one hand holding Maya's, the other waving. She lifted her hand in return. Back at Hart Tower, Claire was waiting with a list of the day's casualties. The Singapore investors were displeased. Mr. Reynolds from accounting wants to know why we're suddenly donating to Lincoln Elementary specifically, and your father called twice. Lauren barely heard her. She was thinking about numbers that don't add up, about a woman crying over bills at a kitchen table, about a system so broken it punished mothers for loving their children. Miss Hart, are you listening? Clear my schedule for Friday, Lauren said. All of it. But all of it, Claire. Because Lauren Hart, heir to a supermarket empire worth billions, had just realized something. She'd been solving the wrong problems her entire life, and she was about to start fixing that. Friday came faster than Lauren expected. She left Hart Tower at 3, ignoring the stack of contracts waiting for her signature. Claire had stopped asking questions after the third schedule cancellation. Now she just watched Lauren with barely concealed concern, like her boss might be having some kind of breakdown. Maybe she was. Lauren pulled up to Lincoln Elementary just as the final bell rang. She spotted Matthew immediately. He had Maya's hand again, leading her through the crowd of kids toward the street. When he saw Lauren's car, his face lit up. Miss Lauren. He jogged over Maya, skipping beside him. You came back again? I did. Lauren stepped out. Matthew, I was hoping I could walk you home today. Meet your mama if she's there. Matthew's smile faltered slightly. Our house it's not fancy or anything. I don't need fancy. He studied her face, then nodded slowly. Okay, it's not far. They walked through neighborhoods that grew progressively more worn. Cracked sidewalks, chain-link fences with missing sections. Houses that leaned slightly, settling into foundations that had given up years ago. Matthew kept up a steady stream of chatter, pointing out landmarks. That's where Mrs. Chen lives. She gives us oranges sometimes. And that's the corner store where Mama buys milk when we have money. Maya held Lauren's hand without being asked, her small fingers warm and trusting. After 15 minutes, Matthew stopped in front of a small wooden house painted a faded blue-green, like the ocean color had been left out in the sun too long. The paint peeled in strips. The porch sagged on one side, but the tiny yard was swept clean, and someone had planted flowers in old coffee cans along the walkway. This is home, Matthew said quietly. Lauren looked at the house and felt her heart constrict. This was where he lived, where he'd heard his mother crying over bills, where buckets caught rain from holes in the roof. The front door opened before they reached the porch. A woman stepped out, and Lauren stopped breathing. She was young, maybe 25, with dark skin and eyes that held a kind of strength Lauren had only seen in war veterans. She wore jeans with patches at the knees and a t-shirt that had been washed so many times the logo was barely visible. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, but she stood straight, shoulders back, chin up, dignified despite everything. "Matthew." Her voice was warm but cautious. "Who's this?" "Mama, this is Miss Lauren. She's the one who bought us lunch at school. And the cookies. Remember the cookies I brought home?" The woman's eyes widened slightly, then settled on Lauren with careful assessment. "I see." Lauren stepped forward, suddenly aware of her designer coat, her leather bag, the car parked at the curb that cost more than this house. "I'm Lauren, a friend of Matthew's. I hope it's okay that I came by." "Sarah Johnson." The woman extended her hand. Her grip was firm, her palm slightly rough from work. "Please come in." The inside of the house hit Lauren harder than she expected. Everything was old, worn, patched together. The furniture looked third-hand at best. The couch had a blanket thrown over it, probably hiding worse damage underneath. In the corner, Lauren could see buckets positioned strategically beneath water stains on the ceiling. But the floors were spotless. Not a speck of dust anywhere. The few dishes in the kitchen were washed and stacked neatly. A vase with wildflowers sat on the small table, adding a splash of color. This woman kept a clean house despite having nothing. "I apologize for the mess," Sarah said, though there wasn't any mess to speak of. "We weren't expecting company." "It's perfect," Lauren said, and meant it. Sarah gestured to the couch. "Please sit. Can I get you something coffee water?" "Coffee would be lovely, thank you." Matthew and Maya disappeared into what must have been their bedroom. Lauren heard giggling, the sound of toys being pulled out. Sarah moved around the tiny kitchen with practiced efficiency. She filled a battered coffee maker, pulled out 2 mugs that didn't match. Her movements were careful, deliberate. "Matthew tells me you've been very kind to my children," Sarah said, her back still turned. "They're wonderful kids." "They are." Pride filled Sarah's voice. "They're everything to me." The coffee maker gurgled. Sarah pulled down a sugar bowl, found 2 spoons. When she finally turned around carrying both mugs, her expression was guarded but polite. "I appreciate what you've done for them, Miss Lauren. Truly. But I want you to know we're not looking for charity. We're going through a rough patch right now, but it's temporary." Lauren took the offered mug. "I understand." "Do you?" Sarah sat across from her, and those strong eyes were back assessing. "Matthew said you drive a nice car, wear expensive clothes. I'm grateful you helped my children, but I need to know, why are you here?" Direct, honest. No games. Lauren respected that. "Matthew told me about your situation, about losing your job, about..." She paused, choosing words carefully. "About the numbers that don't add up." Sarah's jaw tightened. She looked away, and for the first time, Lauren saw a crack in that strong facade. "He told you that. He's worried about you. He's 6 years old. He shouldn't have to worry." Sarah's voice broke slightly, then steadied. "I'm handling it. I have 3 interviews next week. Something will come through. I'm sure it will. I worked at Hart Market for 3 years." The words came out bitter. "Cashier. I was good at my job, never late, never called in sick. But Maya got a fever 104 degrees and I couldn't leave her. Missed 3 shifts in 2 weeks. Sarah's hands tightened around her mug. "They fired me. Said I was unreliable." Lauren felt sick. "I tried to explain. Showed them Maya's hospital bills, asked for unpaid leave, anything. They said policy was policy. Fired me on the spot." Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Funny thing is, I still shop there sometimes. It's the cheapest option around here. I give them my money after they took away my ability to earn it." "That's not right." "No, it's not." Sarah met Lauren's eyes. "But that's how the world works, isn't it? People like me, we're disposable. We can be replaced by the next desperate person who needs a paycheck." Lauren wanted to argue, to defend, to explain. But she couldn't, because Sarah was right. "I want to help," Lauren said quietly. "Why?" Sarah's question was blunt. "You don't know us. Matthew picked up your handkerchief and you fed him lunch. That's a nice gesture. But this," she gestured around the small room, "this isn't your problem to solve. Maybe I want it to be." Sarah stared at her for a long moment. "Who are you really?" Lauren took a breath. This was the moment she could tell the truth, that she owned the company that fired Sarah, that she had enough money to solve every problem in this house with a single check. But something stopped her. Looking at Sarah's proud posture, the way she held herself together despite everything falling apart, Lauren knew that revealing her wealth would change everything. Sarah would either shut down completely or feel obligated to accept help she didn't want. "I'm a friend of Matthew's," Lauren said. "That's all. Someone who sees a good person going through a hard time and wants to help." Sarah's eyes searched her face. "I don't take handouts. I'm not offering one." "Then what are you offering?" "Friendship." The word felt inadequate, but it was honest. "And maybe when you're ready, help finding a job. I have connections." "What kind of connections?" Lauren chose her words carefully. "I work in business, corporate stuff. I know people who hire." It wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth. Sarah was quiet for a long time, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee mug. Finally, she nodded. "I appreciate that. Really. But I need you to understand something." She leaned forward, and the strength was back in her eyes. "I'm going to get my family through this, with or without help. I've been broke before. I've been scared before. But I've never been broken. And I won't start now." Lauren felt something shift in her chest. Admiration. Respect. This woman had nothing, no job, no safety net, a house literally falling apart above her head, but she had something Lauren had been missing her entire life. Dignity. Real unshakable dignity that didn't come from money or status, but from deep inside. "I believe you," Lauren said softly. Sarah's expression softened slightly. "You want to know what keeps me going them." She glanced toward the bedroom where Matthew and Maya's laughter drifted out. "Every morning I wake up and see their faces, and I remember why I fight. They deserve better than this, and I'm going to give it to them." "You already are," Lauren said. "Matthew is the most responsible 6-year-old I've ever met. He protects Maya like she's made of glass. He saves food for you instead of eating it himself. You raised that." Sarah's eyes glistened. She blinked rapidly. "He's my heart." "It shows." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two women from completely different worlds connected by two children and a strange growing understanding. Miss Lauren Matthew appeared in the doorway. "Are you staying for dinner? We don't have much, but Mama makes really good rice and beans." Sarah shot him a look, embarrassed. But Lauren smiled. "I'd love that. If your mama doesn't mind." Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but you're helping me cook." "Deal." As Lauren followed Sarah into the tiny kitchen, watching this woman, who had every reason to be bitter, move with grace and purpose, she realized something. She come here thinking she could help Sarah. But maybe Sarah was helping her. The visits became routine. Lauren found herself at the Blue House 3, sometimes 4 times a week, always making excuses to Claire about community outreach or supplier meetings. The truth was simpler, she needed to be there. Tonight she arrived just as the sun was setting. Sarah opened the door before Lauren could knock. "You're here?" Sarah said, smiling. "Good. I'm making dinner, and you're helping." Lauren followed her into the small kitchen, where a bag of potatoes sat on the counter. Sarah handed her a peeler. "You can't keep eating my food without learning how to make it yourself," Sarah said, demonstrating with smooth strokes. "See, just the skin, not half the potato like last time." Lauren tried to copy her, but the blade caught and took off a thick chunk. She'd never peeled a potato before in her life. "Gentler," Sarah coached. "Let the tool do the work." They stood side by side at the worn counter. Lauren concentrated harder on this simple task than she had on any business deal in recent memory. There was something meditative about the repetitive motion, the quiet companionship. "Miss Lauren," Matthew burst through the front door, Maya right behind him. "You came back. Can you help me with homework? I have math problems." Sarah started to say Lauren was busy, but Lauren was already setting down her potato. Matthew grabbed her hand and pulled her to the living room, where his worksheets were spread across the floor. He looked up at her with those serious eyes. Lauren glanced around for a chair. "You can sit right here," Matthew said, patting the floor beside him. Lauren hesitated, thinking about her tailored pants and expensive blouse, but Matthew was waiting, so she lowered herself down. The hardwood was cool beneath her. Matthew scooted close until his shoulder pressed against her arm. "Okay. This one says, if you have 12 pencils and give away 5, how many are left?" He looked serious. "I think it's 7, but it seems too easy." Lauren watched him work through the problems, occasionally asking questions, but mostly figuring things out himself. Maya wandered over with crayons and paper, settling on Lauren's other side. "Can we draw?" Maya asked, already pulling out her purple crayon. "I'm not very good at drawing," Lauren admitted. "Just try." Maya pushed paper toward her. I'm drawing our family. Lauren picked up a blue crayon and drew a cloud, then another. Clouds were all she knew how to draw. Maya's stick figures gradually took shape, Mama Matthew herself. Matthew finished his math and crawled over. You really can't draw anything except clouds. That's all I'm good at, Lauren said. That's okay, Matthew said with unexpected wisdom. Mama says everyone has different gifts. You don't have to be good at everything. He picked up a red crayon and started adding to Maya's drawing. What about Miss Lauren? She should be in the picture too. Yeah, Maya nodded. She's here all the time. She's like family. Lauren felt something catch in her throat. Matthew carefully drew another stick figure beside the others, taller, standing next to Sarah. There, Matthew said. Now it's our whole family. He looked at Lauren with those eyes that always seemed to see through her. Mama told me something about people who sit on floors with kids. What did she tell you? She said anyone can stand up and look down at children, but people with good hearts get down on the floor instead. Matthew arranged his crayons carefully. Mama says when someone is willing to sit on the floor to play with children, their heart is very close to God. The words hit Lauren hard. She'd spent 30 years building herself higher corner offices on the 42nd floor penthouse apartments, boardrooms where everyone looked up at her. She'd believed elevation meant success, that being above others was being better. But sitting here on this worn rug with these children pressed against her, she realized how much she'd missed. Your mama is very wise, Lauren said quietly. I know, Matthew said. She knows a lot, even though she didn't finish school. She says the best lessons come from paying attention to how people treat each other. Maya added flowers to the drawing. Matthew drew the house behind the figures, carefully adding the windows and the sagging porch. Mama also said you would make a good mama, Matthew continued, or like a guardian who takes care of people. Why would she say that? Because you sit on floors with kids, Matthew explained like it was obvious. That's how you know someone's heart is good. They don't think they're too important or too busy to be where the children are. Sarah appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She'd been listening. Their eyes met, and something passed between them that felt like understanding. He's not wrong, Sarah said softly. People show you who they are in small moments, whether they're willing to be uncomfortable, whether they can meet people where they are, instead of making everyone rise to their level. That tells you everything. Lauren looked at the drawing, at the stick figure version of herself standing with this family. Matthew had drawn her in the middle, her hand connected to his and Sarah's. Can I keep this? Lauren asked. It goes on the fridge, Maya announced. That's where family drawings go. Matthew carefully carried the drawing to the kitchen and secured it to the refrigerator with an apple-shaped magnet right in the center. Lauren stood in that small kitchen looking at the crayon drawing. She'd had portraits painted by famous artists' photographs in every business publication. But this simple drawing was the truest representation of herself she'd ever seen. Not as she'd built herself to be, but as she was learning to become. Thank you for teaching me something important, Lauren said, looking at Matthew. What did I teach you? Lauren knelt down so she could look him in the eyes. You taught me that the best view isn't from the top looking down, it's from right here on the floor where real life happens. Matthew smiled and threw his arms around her neck. Maya joined in from the other side. Over their heads, Lauren saw Sarah watching with tears in her eyes. She'd climbed so high, worked so hard to stay above everything. But these children were teaching her a different truth. The real work happened down here on the floor where you could look into people's eyes and hold their hands and be present without any distance to protect you. As Lauren drove home that night, she kept thinking about Matthew's words, about hearts close to God, about the view from the floor. She'd spent her whole life climbing higher, believing that was where she needed to be. Maybe it was time to learn how to sit down. 3 weeks had passed since that evening on the floor, and Lauren's visits had become routine. Tonight they sat at the small kitchen table after dinner, Matthew and Maya already asleep. Sarah nursed a cup of tea staring out the window. The silence between them was comfortable, easy. You know, Sarah said suddenly, I used to work retail before all this. Nothing glamorous, but it was steady. The pay covered our bills. Lauren looked up from her own cup. Where did you work? Sarah took a slow sip before answering. I worked at Hart Market, the number 5 location downtown near the financial district. I was there for 3 years. Lauren's hands went completely still around her teacup. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Hart Market number 5, her flagship store, the one she'd toured last year, the one with the gleaming floors and perfect efficiency ratings. She couldn't breathe. "What happened?" Lauren managed to ask, though her voice came out strangled. Sarah's jaw tightened. Maya got sick, really sick. Her fever hit 104 in the middle of the night. I rushed her to the emergency room, and they admitted her immediately. They thought it might be meningitis, so they kept her for observation and ran tests. Lauren felt her stomach drop. "I called my manager the next morning." Sarah continued, her voice harder now. "Explained that my daughter was in the hospital, and I needed a few days to make sure she was okay. I wasn't asking for paid leave, just time to be with my sick child." Sarah's fingers tightened around her mug. He said no. Went straight to company policy. 3 consecutive days of unscheduled absence meant automatic termination. I tried to explain it was a medical emergency, that I couldn't exactly schedule my daughter's illness. I begged him to make an exception, offered to bring all the hospital documentation, promised I'd work double shifts when I returned. The bitterness in Sarah's voice cut through the air like a knife. He said policy was policy, no exceptions. Then he fired me over the phone while I was standing in a hospital hallway with my daughter hooked up to machines 20 feet away. He told me my final paycheck would be mailed and I needed to return my uniform within a week or they'd dock my pay. That was it. 3 years of perfect service gone in a 5-minute call because I chose my child over a cash register. Lauren felt like she was going to be sick. The room spun slightly and she gripped the table edge to steady herself, because she knew exactly which policy Sarah was talking about. She'd signed off on it herself 18 months ago during a human resources review. The attendance management protocol designed to reduce absenteeism and improve workforce reliability. It had been presented as a straightforward efficiency measure with projected cost savings and improved scheduling consistency. She'd approved it without asking a single question, without considering emergency situations, without thinking about what 3 consecutive days might actually mean in real human terms. She'd signed the order and moved on to the next agenda item without a second thought. And now she was sitting across from someone whose life had been destroyed by that casual, thoughtless decision. Lauren's mind flashed to the personnel reports that crossed her desk every month, the ones she'd skim through quickly before signing and returning to HR. Pages of employee actions, terminations listed by location and reason code. Terminated for excessive absenteeism appeared dozens of times in every report. She'd never stopped to think about what those words actually meant. Never imagined the real people behind each line item. Never considered that her signature had the power to destroy lives. But now she knew. Now those statistics had a face. Sarah Johnson Hart Market Location 5, terminated for choosing her dying daughter over her job. Just another line in a report Lauren had signed without reading, without caring, without once thinking about the human cost. All those personnel reports she'd signed over the years. How many of them had been situations like Sarah's? How many mothers had been punished for loving their children? How many families had she pushed into poverty with her efficient, consistent, perfectly heartless policies? Matthew's words came back to her with devastating clarity. The way he'd tried to buy half a sandwich with $5. The way he'd talked about his mother crying over math that wouldn't work out, numbers that refused to add up no matter how hard she tried. Lauren had thought it was a child's misunderstanding of adult problems. She'd had no idea he was describing his mother's literal breakdown, watching her try to solve an impossible equation night after night, because Lauren Hart had signed a policy that valued attendance metrics over human beings. The weight of it was crushing. Every decision she'd made from her office on the 42nd floor, every policy she'd approved without reading the fine print, every efficiency measure she'd implemented without considering the human cost, all of it had real consequences for real people. People with names and faces, and children who tried to buy half a sandwich because that's all they could afford after their mother lost her job for having a medical emergency. Lauren thought about Sarah shopping at Hart Market with food stamps after being fired, seeing her former co-workers at the registers enduring their pity or their awkward pretense of not recognizing her, the humiliation of having to give money to the company that had destroyed her ability to earn it. And Lauren had created that system. Lauren had built the machine that chewed Sarah up and spit her out. Lauren's signature on those policies had made Sarah's nightmare inevitable. The guilt was overwhelming, physical, crushing the air from her lungs. But underneath the guilt was something else, something harder and more determined. Because now, Lauren understood what her decisions actually did in practice. Now she'd seen the human cost of her corporate efficiency. And she couldn't unknow, it couldn't go back to signing reports without thinking about the faces behind the statistics. "Sarah," Lauren said, and her voice shook despite her efforts to control it. "I'm so sorry. What happened to you was wrong. Completely fundamentally wrong." Sarah looked at her with eyes that had learned not to hope for much. "A lot of things are wrong. That doesn't mean they change." "This will change," Lauren said, and the conviction in her voice surprised even herself. "This has to change." Sarah gave a small, sad smile. "You sound like you think you can do something about it." Lauren leaned forward, her hands flat on the table, her entire body radiating an intensity she couldn't contain. "Sarah, listen to me. What happened to you? What that manager did, what that policy allowed, it cannot be allowed to stand. A work system cannot punish the goodness in a mother's heart. It cannot force someone to choose between their child's survival and their ability to feed that child. That's not policy. That's cruelty." The words came out fierce and hard, each one a promise she was making, not just to Sarah, but to herself. Because sitting in this small kitchen with its worn counters and patch ceiling looking at a woman her company had failed catastrophically, Lauren finally understood what Matthew had been trying to teach her all along. It wasn't enough to sit on floors with children and feel good about being kind. It wasn't enough to buy groceries and help with homework and make herself feel better about the inequality she'd helped create. Real change required confronting the systems she'd built, dismantling the policies she'd approved, tearing down the efficient, heartless machine she'd spent her career perfecting. She'd learned to get down to where people actually lived. Now she had to use that perspective to rebuild everything from the ground up. "I promise you, Sarah," Lauren said, her voice steady, now powered by absolute certainty. "What happened to you was wrong, and I'm going to make sure it never happens to anyone else. A work system that punishes mothers for loving their children doesn't deserve to exist, and I'm going to change it." Sarah stared at her, searching Lauren's face for something. "Why do you care so much this doesn't affect you?" Lauren thought about Matthew's drawing on the refrigerator, about the stick figure family, with her standing right in the middle, about 3 weeks of sitting on floors and learning to see the world from perspectives other than her corner office. About the moment she'd stopped being Lauren Hart, billionaire heiress, and started being just Lauren Matthews' friend, part of this family. "It affects people I care about," Lauren said simply. "That makes it my responsibility to fix." The truth she couldn't say yet hung heavy between them, that it was more than responsibility. It was guilt. It was accountability. It was the crushing weight of understanding that she'd created the very system that had destroyed Sarah's life, and now she had to answer for it. But first, she had to make it right. "I need to go," Lauren said, standing abruptly. The chair scraped against the floor with a harsh sound. "But I'm coming back. And when I do, things are going to be different." Sarah looked up at her confusion, and something that might have been hope warring in her expression. "What are you going to do?" "Whatever it takes," Lauren said. She drove home through empty streets, her hands steady on the wheel, but her mind racing. Sarah's story played on repeat, the phone call in the hospital hallway, the 3 years of loyalty erased in 5 minutes, the impossible math that would never add up without a paycheck. And behind every detail, Lauren's own signature approving the policies that made it all possible. She'd spent her entire career optimizing systems and maximizing efficiency. She'd built Hart Market into an empire by being ruthless about standards and consistency. She'd never once stopped to consider what those standards looked like from the other side, what that consistency meant for people who couldn't fit neatly into her corporate frameworks. Now she knew, and knowing changed everything. Lauren pulled into her building's parking garage and sat in the silence after turning off the engine. Her penthouse waited above all, luxury and emptiness. Hart Tower waited across the city, gleaming with success, built on policies that destroyed lives. And the Blue House waited too, with Sarah and Matthew and Maya, the family that had shown Lauren what actually mattered. Tomorrow, she would walk into Hart Tower and begin dismantling everything she'd built. She'd rewrite every policy challenge, every assumption, tear down every efficient, heartless system that valued metrics over human beings. Because she'd made a promise. And Lauren Hart had never broken a promise in her life. She wasn't about to start now. Lauren didn't sleep that night. She sat at her penthouse desk until dawn, pulling employee data, turnover statistics, and recruitment costs. By the time the sun rose over the city, she had everything she needed. At 8 o'clock sharp, she walked into Hart Tower with a folder full of numbers that would prove her point. She'd called an emergency board meeting for 9, citing urgent policy matters. Her father would be there. So would James Miller, the head of human resources who designed the very policies that had destroyed Sarah's life. Lauren was ready for war. The boardroom on the 42nd floor was exactly as she remembered: long, mahogany table leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Her father, Richard Hart, sat at the head of the table in his usual position of authority. At 65, he still commanded every room he entered, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, a man who'd built an empire and had no patience for sentiment. James Miller sat to his right, a thin man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of face that had never learned to smile. He'd been with Hart Market for 20 years, climbing the ranks by implementing exactly the kind of ruthless efficiency that maximized profits and minimized human considerations. "Lauren," her father said, checking his watch, "you called an emergency meeting. This better be important." "It is." Lauren took her seat across from them, setting her folder on the table with deliberate precision. "We need to talk about our human resources policies, specifically our attendance and termination protocols." James Miller's expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened slightly on the pen he was holding. "Our policies are industry standard. They've been reviewed and approved at every level." "They're destroying lives," Lauren said flatly. "And they're costing us money in ways we haven't bothered to measure." Her father leaned back in his chair, studying her with the kind of look she'd seen 1,000 times before, the one that said he was trying to figure out what game she was playing. "Explain." Lauren opened her folder and pulled out the first document. 3 weeks ago, I met a woman named Sarah Johnson, former employee at our number 5 location. Worked there for 3 years with perfect attendance, perfect performance reviews, never a single complaint. Then her daughter got sick. Fever of 104, possible meningitis required hospitalization, and Sarah called her manager to request a few days off to be with her child in the hospital. She slid the document across the table. It was Sarah's employment record, which Lauren had pulled from the system late last night. Her manager fired her over the phone, cited our 3-day automatic termination policy. No consideration for the circumstances, no discretion, no humanity, just policy. James Miller picked up the document, glanced at it, then set it back down. "The policy exists for a reason. We can't make exceptions every time an employee has a personal issue, or we'd have no workforce consistency." "This wasn't a personal issue," Lauren said, her voice hardening. "This was a medical emergency involving a child, and firing her wasn't just cruel, it was a management failure." Lauren, her father started, but she cut him off. "Let me finish." She pulled out another set of documents. "I've been looking at our turnover data for the past 3 years. Do you know what our annual employee turnover rate is across all locations?" James Miller shifted uncomfortably. "Retail typically runs high turnover. It's expected in the industry." 47%, Lauren said, ignoring his deflection. "We lose nearly half our workforce every single year. And do you know what it costs us to replace each employee between recruiting, hiring, training, and the productivity loss during the learning curve?" She slid the cost analysis across the table. "An average of $3,000 per employee. Multiply that by the thousands of employees we churn through annually, and we're looking at tens of millions in completely unnecessary costs." Her father picked up the analysis, his expression sharpening with interest. Numbers always got his attention. "Now look at this." Lauren continued, pulling out a third document. "I cross-referenced our termination records with our turnover data. Employees terminated under policies like the 3-day rule. Employees we fired for having emergencies or family crises, those positions have a 93% turnover rate in the following year, because we fill them with people who learn very quickly that this company doesn't value loyalty or humanity, so they leave the moment they find something better." James Miller's face had gone pale. "Those numbers don't tell the whole story. We need consistent enforcement to maintain discipline across the workforce." "Discipline," Lauren's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "You call it discipline to fire a mother for sitting in a hospital with her dying child. You call it consistent enforcement to destroy someone's life for having a medical emergency." "Lauren, that's enough." Her father's voice cut through the room like a knife. "I understand you're upset about this particular case, but you can't let emotion cloud your business judgment. We have policies for a reason." And I'm telling you, those policies are failing us, Lauren shot back. Not just morally, which should matter, but apparently doesn't, but financially. We're hemorrhaging money because we're treating our employees like disposable parts instead of human beings. We're losing our most loyal, most experienced workers because we punish them for having families and lives outside of work. She leaned forward, planting her hands flat on the table. Sarah Johnson worked for us for 3 years. 3 years of institutional knowledge, customer relationships, operational expertise. We threw all of that away because she spent 3 days in a hospital. And now we've spent $3,000 replacing her with someone who will probably quit within a year because they'll see exactly how we treat people and decide they want no part of it. So, what are you proposing? Her father asked, his tone suggesting he was humoring her rather than genuinely interested. I'm proposing we implement a family protection program, Lauren said, starting with a pilot at 5 locations. Emergency family leave for medical situations, paid or unpaid, depending on circumstances. Flexible scheduling for parents with sick children. Protection from termination for employees dealing with genuine family emergencies. We track the results for 6 months. Turnover rates, recruitment costs, employee satisfaction, productivity metrics, and we see if treating people like human beings actually improves our bottom line. James Miller shook his head immediately. That's completely unrealistic. The operational complexity alone would be a nightmare, and the cost would be less than what we're currently spending on turnover. Lauren interrupted. I've run the numbers. Even if we assume the most expensive implementation possible, we'd break even within the first year just from reduced turnover. And that's not counting the benefits of having more experienced, more loyal employees who actually give a damn about their work because they know the company gives a damn about them. Her father was quiet for a long moment, studying the documents in front of him. This is about more than numbers for you. You've gotten personally involved with this woman and her family. It wasn't a question, but Lauren answered anyway. Yes, I have. I've seen firsthand what our policies do to real people. I've watched a 6-year-old try to buy half a sandwich because that's all his mother can afford after we destroyed her career for loving her daughter. I've sat in their house and listened to her describe being fired over the phone while standing in a hospital hallway. And I've realized that every decision we make in this boardroom has real consequences for real human beings. And maybe it's time we started caring about that. Business isn't about caring, her father said sharply. Business is about making profitable decisions that sustain the company long term. And I'm telling you that our current approach isn't sustainable. Lauren fired back. We're building a workforce of people who have no loyalty to us because we've shown them we have no loyalty to them. We're creating a culture where good employees leave and mediocre ones stay because they have no better options. We're sacrificing long-term stability for short-term efficiency metrics that don't actually measure what matters. She pulled out her final document, her shareholder card, and placed it deliberately in the center of the table. I hold 30% of this company's voting shares. Mother left them to me, and they give me significant say in how we operate. So I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you this is happening. Either you approve the pilot program, or I'll take this to a full shareholder vote and explain very publicly why Heart Market fires mothers for having medical emergencies. Let's see how that plays with our customer base. The room went completely silent. James Miller looked like he'd been slapped. Her father's expression was unreadable, but she could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. You're threatening me, Richard said quietly. Threatening the company. I'm trying to save it, Lauren said. From itself. From policies that are morally bankrupt and financially stupid. If Heart Market doesn't have room for basic humanity, for treating employees like they matter, then I will pull every dollar I control and watch this place crumble. Because I won't be part of a system that destroys families to make quarterly earnings look good. The silence stretched out. Lauren held her father's gaze, refusing to back down, her hands steady despite her racing heart. Finally, Richard Hart leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. 5 locations, 6-month pilot, but you're personally responsible for the implementation and the results. If this fails, if it costs us money or creates operational chaos, it ends immediately, and we never speak of it again. Agreed, Lauren said without hesitation. And Lauren, her father's voice was cold. Don't ever threaten me in my own boardroom again. Then don't give me a reason to, she replied. James Miller looked between them, his expression caught somewhere between shock and resignation. I'll need time to design the program parameters. No, Lauren cut him off. I'll design it. You'll implement it. because I don't trust you to create anything other than another version of the same heartless system. This needs someone who actually understands what we're trying to fix." She stood, gathering her documents. "I'll have the pilot program framework on your desk by end of week. We'll start implementation at locations 5, 7, 12, 18, and 23. And we're going to prove that treating people with dignity isn't just the right thing to do, it's good business." Lauren walked out of the boardroom without waiting for dismissal, her heart pounding, but her steps steady. She'd won. Not everything she wanted, not a complete overhaul of the system, but she'd won enough. 5 locations, 6 months. A chance to prove that humanity and profit weren't mutually exclusive, a chance to start making things right. 2 weeks after the boardroom confrontation, Lauren drove to the Blue House with an envelope in her bag and a nervous energy she couldn't quite contain. She'd spent every day since the meeting designing the family protection program, working late into the nights to get every detail right. But the program was only half of what she needed to make right. Sarah answered the door with her usual warm smile, though Lauren could see the fatigue around her eyes. Job hunting was taking its toll. "Lauren, come in. I wasn't expecting you today." "I know. I needed to talk to you about something." Lauren followed her inside where Matthew and Maya were doing homework at the kitchen table. Miss Lauren Maya jumped up to hug her and Matthew waved with a pencil still in his hand. "Hey guys, keep working. I need to borrow your mom for a minute." Sarah led her to the small living room and they sat on the worn couch. Lauren pulled the envelope from her bag, her hand steadier than she felt. "Sarah, I need to tell you something I should have told you weeks ago." Lauren took a breath. "My family owns Hart Market. I'm Lauren Hart. The company that fired you is my company." Sarah went completely still, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding to something that might have been betrayal. "You knew this whole time. You knew what they did to me and you didn't say anything." "I didn't know at first," Lauren said quickly. "I didn't know it was you until you told me. But yes, once I knew, I should have told you immediately. I was a coward. I was afraid you'd hate me, afraid I'd lose you and the kids. But that's not an excuse. You deserve the truth." Sarah stood up, pacing to the window, her back to Lauren. The silence stretched out painfully. "I went to the board," Lauren continued. "I fought with my father and our head of HR. I showed them what our policies do to people like you, and I won approval for a pilot program, family protection policies, at 5 locations to start. Emergency leave for medical situations, protection from termination for genuine family crises. It's not enough, not yet, but it's a start." Sarah turned around, her eyes searching Lauren's face. "Why are you telling me this now?" Lauren held up the envelope. "Because I want to offer you a job, not out of pity or guilt, though I have plenty of both. I want to offer you a job because I need you." Sarah's eyebrows rose. "Need me?" "I'm creating a new position, family welfare coordinator, someone to oversee the implementation of the protection program, to be the advocate for employees dealing with family emergencies, to make sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else." Lauren stood holding out the envelope. "And I can't think of anyone more qualified than someone who's lived through exactly what we're trying to prevent." Sarah didn't take the envelope. "This sounds like charity dressed up as a job offer." "It's not," Lauren said firmly. "I need your real-world experience. I need someone who understands what it's like to be on the other side of corporate policy, who knows what actually helps versus what just sounds good in a boardroom. I need someone who'll call me out when I'm wrong and fight for people who can't fight for themselves. That's not charity, Sarah. That's me being smart enough to hire the best person for the job." Sarah's expression softened slightly, but doubt still lingered in her eyes. "I don't have a college degree. I don't have HR experience or business training." "You have something better," Lauren said. "You have empathy. You have experience. You have the exact perspective this company desperately needs. And you have the courage to stand up for what's right, which matters more than any degree." She held the envelope out again. "Please, open it." Sarah took it slowly, her hand shaking slightly as she pulled out the offer letter. Her eyes widened as she read the salary, double what she'd been making as a cashier. "This is too much," Sarah whispered. "It's market rate for a coordinator position," Lauren said. "Plus benefits health insurance for you and the kids, paid time off. And yes, protected emergency leave. I need you to help thousands of other single mothers who are one emergency away from losing everything, just like you were. I need your experience to make sure we actually help them, instead of just creating more policies that sound good but don't work in practice." Sarah stared at the letter, tears streaming down her face. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Lauren said softly. Let me try to make this right. Not by erasing what happened because I can't, but by making sure your suffering means something, that it changes things for other people. Sarah looked up at her, and after a long moment she nodded. Yes. Okay. Yes. Lauren felt something tight in her chest finally loosen. Thank you. You start Monday at the corporate office. We'll set you up with everything you need. Maya's voice called from the kitchen. Mama, can we show Miss Lauren our pictures? In a minute, baby, Sarah called back, wiping her eyes. Then she looked at Lauren with something that might have been the beginning of forgiveness. Thank you for fighting for this, for trying to change things. I should have done it years ago, Lauren said, but better late than never. They walked back to the kitchen where Matthew and Maya had abandoned their homework in favor of drawing. Lauren watched them for a moment, then remembered the other reason for her visit. Actually, I have something for you guys too. She went to her car and came back with 2 packages. Maya tore into hers first, gasping with delight when she saw the unicorn backpack, bright purple with a sparkly horn and rainbow mane. It's so pretty. For school, Lauren said, so you can carry all your books and crayons. Matthew opened his more carefully, his eyes going wide when he saw the professional art supply, set colored pencils, markers, sketch pads, everything a young artist could want. Miss Lauren, this is too much. It's not, Lauren said. You're talented, Matthew. I've seen your drawings. You should have good tools. He ran his fingers over the supplies with something like reverence, then looked up at her with those serious eyes. Thank you. Really? The next morning, Lauren arrived at Lincoln Elementary just as school was starting. She'd arranged a meeting with Principal Morrison to finalize the lunch program sponsorship. She watched from her car as Matthew walked through the gates, his new art supplies in a bag over his shoulder, Maya skipping beside him with her unicorn backpack bouncing. They looked different, somehow lighter, more carefree, like kids who didn't have to worry quite so much about whether there'd be food at lunch. Inside the principal's office, Mrs. Morrison greeted her warmly. Miss Hart, the cafeteria staff are thrilled about your donation program. Starting today, we'll be able to provide free lunch to any student who needs it. No questions asked. Good, Lauren said. No child should have to ask for half a sandwich because that's all they can afford. She thought about Matthew standing at that counter weeks ago, clutching his $5, trying to figure out how to feed himself and his sister on money that wasn't enough. That would never happen again, not at this school. At lunchtime, Lauren stood in the back of the cafeteria watching. Matthew and Maya went through the line, and when they reached the counter, the cafeteria worker smiled at them. What would you like today, honey? Matthew looked at the options, real food, hot meals, fruit milk, all available without having to count dollars or ask for portions to be split. Can I have the chicken tenders and a juice box? Of course. And what about you, sweetie? The worker asked Maya. Mac and cheese, please. They carried their trays to a table, full meals with no worrying, no calculating, no going without. Maya bit into her food and smiled that bright smile Lauren had come to love, and Matthew gave his sister the better pieces of chicken without thinking twice. But this time, he had enough for both of them. More than enough. Lauren watched them eat and laugh with other kids, watched Maya show off her new unicorn backpack to anyone who'd watched Matthew pull out his new colored pencils during free time to draw with his friends. They looked like regular kids now, unburdened by adult worries about money and food and survival. Principal Morrison appeared at Lauren's elbow. You've changed things for a lot of families here. This lunch program means parents don't have to choose between feeding their kids and paying rent. It's a start, Lauren said, but there's more work to do. She thought about Sarah starting her new job Monday, about the Family Protection Program rolling out across 5 stores, about all the other employees out there who needed someone to fight for them the way she was learning to fight. It wasn't enough yet. It wouldn't undo the damage done or erase the years of suffering her policies had caused. But watching Matthew and Maya eat lunch without worry, seeing them act like the children they deserved to be, Lauren felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real hope that things could actually change, that she could use her privilege and power for something that mattered, that maybe, just maybe, she could help build a world where no mother had to choose between her sick child and her job, where no 6-year-old had to try to buy half a sandwich, where no family had to do impossible math trying to make numbers add up that never would. She'd won the battle in the boardroom. Now came the harder part, making sure the victory actually meant something in people's lives. But watching Matthew draw with his new supplies and Maya bounce in her unicorn backpack, Lauren knew she was finally on the right path. The path that led down from her tower and onto the floor where real life happened, where real people struggled and survived and deserved so much better than the systems she'd built. And she was going to give them better. One family at a time, one policy at a time, one changed life at a time. Starting with the family that had taught her how to see again. 8 months had passed since that boardroom confrontation, and Lauren pulled up to the Blue House on a warm Friday evening. The first thing she noticed was the roof. New shingles solid and weatherproof, no more buckets scattered throughout the house catching leaks. Sarah had worked hard these months as family welfare coordinator, and the steady paycheck had allowed her to fix the things that had been falling apart for so long. Tonight was special. Matthew had just finished first grade with perfect marks, and Sarah had invited Lauren to a celebration dinner. Lauren had cleared her entire evening for it, ignoring the 3 other commitments that had been on her calendar. She knocked, and Maya opened the door, practically vibrating with excitement. "Miss Lauren Matthew got all A's, come see." Inside the house felt warmer, more settled. Sarah appeared from the kitchen, pulling Lauren into a quick hug. "Perfect timing. Dinner's almost ready, and Matthew's been waiting to show you his report card." Matthew emerged from his room folder in hand, his face glowing with pride. He showed Lauren the report card, straight A's, and a glowing note from his teacher about his kindness and dedication. They sat down to dinner together, the same small kitchen table, but now set with proper dishes and laden with food Sarah had prepared. Roast chicken, vegetables, fresh bread. Maya chattered about kindergarten, Matthew talked about wanting to take art classes, and Lauren felt her phone buzz repeatedly in her pocket, but ignored it. Finally, she pulled it out and glanced at the screen. A text from Noah, her senior assistant. "Board meeting at 7 p.m. New acquisition proposal. Your father expects you there." Lauren looked at the message, then at the family around the table. Sarah noticed her hesitation. "You can go if you need to. We understand if it's important." Lauren turned off her phone completely and set it face down on the table. "I'm exactly where I need to be." After dinner, Matthew brought out books from the school library. "Miss Lauren, will you read with us? We're doing this one about space." "Of course." They settled on the couch, Matthew and Maya on either side of her, the book spread across their laps. Lauren read while the children pointed at pictures and asked questions. It was simple and ordinary and exactly what she wanted. At some point, Maya dozed off against her shoulder, and Matthew carefully closed the book. Sarah was in the kitchen cleaning up, and Lauren stood to help, but Sarah waved her off. "You're our guest. Stay with the kids." Lauren settled Maya on the couch and stood stretching. Her eyes drifted to the refrigerator, and she walked over to look at something she'd glanced at months ago, but never really studied. The drawing. The stick figure family portrait Matthew had made that first evening they'd drawn together. 4 figures holding hands in front of the blue house, clouds floating above. She looked closer and saw the careful labels in Matthew's handwriting beneath each figure. Mama, Matthew, Maya, and Miss Lauren. She was in the family portrait, not visiting. Not separate. Right there in the center, holding hands with Sarah on one side and Matthew on the other. Lauren touched the paper gently, her throat tightening. "He put you in there because you're family," Sarah said quietly from behind her. "That's what he told me when he drew it. Said you belonged with us." Lauren turned to face her. "I don't deserve that." "Yes, you do," Sarah said firmly. "You fought for us when you didn't have to. You changed your whole company's policies because you saw what they did to real people. You didn't just write a check and walk away. You stayed." Lauren gestured toward the porch. "Can we talk outside for a minute?" They took their coffee to the front steps, sitting side by side in the cooling evening air. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, the kind of calm that comes when the day is winding down and families are settling in for the night. Lauren took a breath. "Sarah, do you remember the day we first met when Matthew picked up my handkerchief outside Lincoln Elementary?" "I remember. He came home talking about the nice lady with the fancy car." "I almost didn't stop," Lauren admitted. "When he ran after me with that handkerchief, my first instinct was to have my assistant handle it so I could stay on schedule. I was annoyed that children were interrupting my inspection, but something made me stop, made me actually look at him." She turned to face Sarah. "And when Matthew handed me that handkerchief with those serious eyes and that shy smile, something shifted inside me. I didn't understand it then. I just knew I couldn't forget his face." Lauren's voice dropped to almost a whisper. What Matthew did that day wasn't just returning a lost item. He gave me back something I'd lost years ago. He gave me back my soul. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. He has that gift, always seeing the best in people. He saw that I was lost, Lauren continued, that I'd built this life of power and success, and somewhere along the way, forgot how to be human, how to connect with real people, how to care about things that actually mattered beyond profit margins and quarterly reports. She gestured back toward the house. You and the kids taught me how to live again, how to sit on floors and draw pictures and care about someone else's problems more than my stock portfolio. You saved me just as much as I helped you, maybe more. Sarah reached over and squeezed her hand. We helped each other. That's what family does. The screen door creaked open and Matthew appeared, rubbing his eyes. Mama, Miss Lauren, can we go for a walk? Maya woke up and wants to see the sunset before it gets dark. Sarah and Lauren exchanged glances and smiled. Sure, sweetheart. Let's go. Maya came tumbling out behind her brother, still sleepy, but excited about the adventure. Without thinking, she grabbed Lauren's hand. Matthew took Lauren's other hand, and Sarah took Matthew's free hand, forming a chain connecting all four of them. They walked down the quiet street together as the sky began its transformation into evening. The sunset was spectacular, brilliant oranges and purples bleeding into the deepest blue Lauren had ever seen at the horizon. That particular shade that exists only in the brief space between day and night. The blue of hope. Maya pointed at clouds and Matthew identified their shapes. Sarah laughed at something Maya said, and Lauren found herself laughing too, the sound coming naturally and easily. They walked past houses with lights coming on in windows, past neighbors sitting on porches who waved as they passed. Just a family taking an evening walk. Nothing special to anyone watching, but to Lauren it was everything. She looked down at Matthew's small hand clasped in hers, remembering that first moment when he'd approached her with the handkerchief. She'd thought she was doing him a favor by stopping by, noticing him. She'd had no idea that he was the one offering the favor, the chance to find her way back to humanity, to connection to what actually mattered in life. The sky deepened into twilight, that vivid blue intensifying for just a moment before fading toward night. The color of transition, of change, of new beginnings. Matthew looked up at her and smiled, squeezing her hand. I'm glad you're here, Miss Lauren. Me too, Matthew. Lauren said, her voice thick with emotion. Me too. They continued their walk through the peaceful evening, four people connected by circumstance and choice, and something deeper than either by love, by commitment, by the decision to be family, even when the world said they had no reason to be. The blue sky surrounded them, vast and beautiful, holding them in its light. Lauren Hart, who had spent 30 years climbing to the top of towers and building empires, had finally found what she'd been searching for all along. Not in boardrooms or penthouses or corner offices, but here on a quiet street in a modest neighborhood, holding hands with a 6-year-old boy who'd picked up a handkerchief and somehow picked up her heart along with it. The sunset painted everything in shades of hope. Orange and purple, and that deep, endless blue dot, and they walked on together, hands linked, hearts connected. Home.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.